Seiza is a traditional Japanese way of sitting that is still very common in Japan. The word Seiza is comprised of two characters. The first character is tadashi, which means correct, while the second character is suwaru, which means to sit. And when put together, you have Seiza, which basically means the correct way to sit. In today's video, I'm going to cover a couple variations of Seiza that's going to help strengthen your feet and ankles in order to help improve your grappling game. The first movement is the standard Seiza, and this is where your feet are flat with heels to butt. Our second variation will have you on your toes. This active toes position is important for mobility and pressure in grappling and leads to our third movement in which we will move in and out of the position. Please note that I'm not teaching specific grappling techniques, and while I might reference certain techniques, the purpose of these videos is simply to help you to move better. The better and more efficiently you move, the more easily it's going to be for you to access your grappling techniques. All right, let's step on the mat and get to it. Seiza can be quite a difficult position to sit in if you're not used to it. Now, the majority of people that do have trouble with Seiza have trouble because they don't quite have the range of motion in their ankles in order to be able to straighten their foot like I'm showing you right now. Basically, the range of motion is about here. And because there isn't that full straight line happening, it can be very, very difficult to sit on top of your feet. Now, speaking of sitting on top of your feet, there's quite a few different versions that we see. Some people will cross their feet. Even see some people sink between their heels and sink down into this position. Now, the actual correct way of sitting in Seiza is bringing your heels as close together as possible, placing your sit bones on top of the heels. Now, the reason for this is that it allows you to sit in the correct position that allows your body to be upright. For example, take a look at when I place my butt between my heels. Notice that I round my back. I sink down into this particular position. I'm compressing my calves. I'm cutting off the blood circulation to my lower legs. It's not allowing me to be able to breathe properly as well. So this would be the incorrect way of sitting in this position. Now compare that to when I actually bring my heels closer together and take my sit bones and place them on top of my heels. It allows me to sit upright. It allows better blood flow in my lower limbs, and as well, it allows me to sit upright so that I can focus on my breathing. Again, as I mentioned in the very beginning, it can be difficult if you don't have that range of motion in the ankles. But the way to actually get better at this position is sitting in this position. I know, sounds silly, right? But a little bit of time each day, I'm talking maybe starting off with just like 10 seconds, is a great place to start. Focusing on, again, making sure that you're bringing your heels as close as possible to each other, and also making sure that you're sitting your sit bones on your heels. Now, one thing that is also going to help with that is taking a look at the knees. If you try and bring your knees too close together, it's going to be difficult to also bring your heels. So, in order to help you to bring your heels together, you open the knees. This is obviously going to allow you to bring your heels a bit closer together. Now, you need to find a distance that's going to be good for you. It's going to be different for everyone. General rule of thumb, though, is to make two fists, placing them in between your knees and trying to start from there and then making some slight adjustments. This position is extremely comfortable for me. I've been sitting in this position for many years, not consecutively, of course, but whenever I would have my kendo practice, whenever I have judo, even Brazilian jiu-jitsu, shorinji kempo, all the martial arts that I've done start in this position in Japan because we all line up and show respect for where we are to our instructors. Now, I mentioned the crossing the foot position. Let's take a look at that quickly. You do still see some people do this. However, by being in this position, it's not going to allow for good speed in which to exit this position compared to this position where you can move either foot depending on what you need to do. That's a video for another day. For right now, though, we first need to get very comfortable with this first variation of Seiza, in which we start off hands in between the knees, making sure that we can work on bringing our heels close together, taking our sit bones, placing them on the heels, sitting upright, and increase the duration of which we're able to sit in this position. All right, next up, we're going to look at a variation of Seiza. All I'm going to ask you to do is go up on your toes. This can be surprisingly difficult in the beginning. But if you're doing any sort of grappling, you know that you need to have active toes. You need to have your toes up so that you can push away from the mat to give pressure to your opponent and make sure that they're not pushing you backwards. If your feet are flat, there's ability for them to be able to push you backwards and topple over. But again, if you have active toes and can push into the mat, it's going to allow you to keep from getting pushed over. Now, the way to practice that is with this Seiza variation. Starting off in our standard Seiza position, simply sitting up and placing your toes on the mat, making sure that your heels don't fall out to the side. Keeping your heels in, sitting back onto your heels. In the beginning, this might be too much for you. And if that's the case, then rather than sitting all the way back, use your hands as training wheels and just slowly rock back, but make sure that you don't let your heels go out to the side. That's it. What you'll probably find is that the bottom of your feet just don't have the strength and mobility to allow you to be able to get into that position. And this is what we're doing, is really focusing on strengthening our feet, improving the mobility and the flexibility of the bottoms of your feet. That's going to help you to be able to get into that position. It's going to transfer over to having stronger feet and ankles for when you start putting this into motion when you're grappling. So once again, start off simply in this first Seiza position. From here, bring your toes up, sitting back down, and slowly work on getting deeper and deeper into this position. So you notice I'm sinking from here deeper and deeper, walking myself back into that toes up Seiza position. All right, final variation we're going to take a look at is actually putting that into motion. And so we're going to start off in our Seiza position. I'll show you from the side and then we'll show some different angles here. But start off in this position. I'll rock myself forward, going up on my toes. I'm then going to use my fingers as training wheels, and I'm going to pull my knees off the ground and then settle my knees back to the floor before I place my feet flat on the floor, bringing my heels together, and finally sitting in the starting position, which is the standard Seiza position. Now, what we're working towards being able to do is do this without having to use our hands, and doing it in a way where we have control in each position. This is going to further strengthen toes, bottoms of your feet, ankles, and also work on your balance, which is going to translate over to when you're working on your particular grappling techniques. Remember, active toes are very important. This is one way that we can train outside of the dojo, the gym, and get really good at understanding the ability and our capabilities that we have in our body. And that's why we're looking at all of these movements, is getting really good at simply being able to move better so that when we start going into our grappling sessions, we have the wherewithal to know where we stand, and it's going to allow us to get better with our grappling techniques. So once again, first start off here by simply using your fingers to get you into the positions slowly so that you can get really comfortable with them. Then you can start shifting so that maybe you don't use your hands when you go to the active toes second position. Then you use your fingers though to pull back and to lower yourself back to the floor. And then again, gradually working on being able to perform this movement, leading with the chest. Toes come up, sitting back. Sitting back, you can use your arms. Slowly lower the knees to the floor, and then move into standard Seiza position. That's it. Once these variations of Seiza are very comfortable for you, you can put them together into a little bit of a flow using the movement that we have from a previous video. Check it out. So obviously our movements today weren't that dynamic, but they're extremely important in order to allow us to be able to access our particular techniques and move better in our grappling. So today I really encourage you to spend time working on each of these variations. Go slowly. There's no rush with this, and you don't want to rush it and actually end up getting injured. But I guarantee you, if you work on this, you will improve the strength of your feet, toes, ankles, as well as your mobility, and that's going to carry over to your grappling game. All right, let me know what you think of this video. Leave a comment below, and hey, step on the mat and get to it.